Okay. So, hi everyone, I'm Juan. Thank you for the invitation first, not just to the talk, but also to the group, which I found out through Mary last month, and it looks very interesting so far. I'm going to talk about holographic.earth, which is a small project I created. And in case you hadn't noticed, that's a URL. So you can test it for yourself, maybe now or maybe after the talk. And so this is a website that tries to show world map imagery in 3 dimensions. So originally, this was created for the Looking Glass holographic displays, which I think many of you already know because there was a talk about them last month. And they are very cool devices that let you visualize 3D data without glasses, without a VR display in a very user-friendly way, and also with fine detail and really good quality. So as you can see in the demo video here, we see the display on the left with the 3D image, and on the right, you can see the interface of the website I created. So there are some preset locations that you can select and visualize in 3D. Or you could also zoom in and out of the map, scroll to a different location, or use the search function to see how interesting some place you have in mind is. Okay, so I would like to explain how this works internally, but first let me explain that even if you don't have one of these devices, one of these Looking Glass displays, you can also use some of the techniques you are already familiar with to visualize the 3D content. And the available options are anaglyph, as you can see here on the left, and that is the classic red and cyan tinted images, one for each eye. Then we've got cross-eye and parallel for those of you that can play with your eyes, like with the classic Magic Eye books. And then here on the right, we've got an easier to visualize version, which is sort of a short animation that displays a sequence of different camera angles that sort of convey the feeling of depth. So how does this work internally? Of course, we've got a first data source, which is satellite imagery, very similar to what you could find in Google Maps by switching to the satellite layer. And then we also have depth information from the same location. The example on the right shows depth information in a very easy to understand way. So here we see Monument Valley, and the darker areas are further from the satellite or further from the viewer, from the screen in this case maybe. And the lighter areas are taller, higher, or closer to the subject. So the peaks of mountains would be white in this case. However, for a computer, that is not the most convenient way to encode the data, or there can be better options. So the image you see on the right, instead of using a shade between black and white, uses a combination of red, green, and blue values. In case you have not had experience with computer imagery before, both screens and digital images are usually encoded pixel by pixel, and each pixel has three values, one for red, one for green, and one for blue, that where the amount can go between 0 and 255. So, for example, 255.00 would be red, all 3 zeros would be black, all 3 255 would be white, and any combination of those could give us any color in the spectrum. By combining these values and applying these the mathematical formula you see at the top, we can encode more than 16 million altitude values. And that, considering the range of different altitudes on Earth, gives us a 0.1 potential meter precision. That doesn't mean the data we're seeing actually has that level of precision. In fact, if we got that close, the information wouldn't really be useful, but it still gives us very nice gradation between tall or high and low areas. If you're interested in these encoding and how this works, you can check the Mapbox documentation. And Mapbox is the service I'm using to load both the satellite imagery and the depth information. So just like you can have a satellite layer or a map layer or one that displays roads or points of interest, you can load a depth layer, which looks like the image on the right, but actually means something like the image on the right here. So the altitude of each element on Earth by pixel. Okay, so because this was designed for the looking glass devices, the altitude information and the relative difference in altitude between pixels on the screen is used to modify the satellite image. So we take each pixel, measure its altitude, and displace it horizontally to find its new point in a new image. So taller, as you see in the GIF on the left, taller points like the peaks of mountains would move horizontally a lot. Valleys would not move that much. And in this case, if you pay close attention to it, the river is actually moving slightly in the opposite direction to the peaks. So when we translate that to the other viewing methods, for example, for the looking glass device, we would generate 48 different camera angles that the display will show us depending on the angle we're looking at it from. When translating that to more straightforward viewing methods like cross-eye, parallel, or anaglyph, what we do is simply pick two of the images, and which ones depend on the level of depthness we want to convey. And once the system is in place, we can browse to any location on Earth and instantly or close to instantly have a 3D effect of the region we're seeing. So here, if you want to test it for yourself, we've got cross-eye on the top and parallel on the bottom. And this is a lake in Canada on the left and the famous Uluru Mountain in Australia. Okay, there are some additional options you might want to play with. One is the manual depth control. So by default, the website decides how much depth it will apply to your scenario, to your image. And that's to find a balance between how interesting the volume is in the image. For example, areas that are flatter are exaggerated, whereas areas that have very dramatic changes in altitude are sort of smoothened, or the depthness is reduced to avoid being inconvenient or uncomfortable to the eye. And you can replace the satellite imagery as well for a terrain map as shown in the image that conveys altitude as colors and applies some lighting, some shading to the volume so that the depth image is more obvious. So you might want to try this for yourself, or we can explore some areas on Earth. Let's do that. This is let me think. I think this is in Chile. It's a volcano. This is how it looks with the animated version. As you see, the peaks of the volcano move more than the crater itself, but in turn more than the rest of the mountain. And we could load the cross-eye version, the parallel version, or the red and cyan. I'll bring up the chat, and if anyone wants to suggest a place, I'm open to suggestions and we can load it in the system. In the meantime, I'll load some of the presets as well. This is the Caspian Sea, which surprisingly does have some volume especially in the south. Okay, Mount Thor, Canada. I'll load it first because it's one of the presets. It's this mountain that has sort of a hook shape at the top. And it's quite dramatic. And let's look for Mount St. Helens. I guess this is the one. Is this it? Yeah, there's some quite nice volume to it. I'm not sure if you prefer cross-eye or parallel. I'm just, I selected cross-eye because that's what I feel more comfortable with. But let's show parallel for a second. And of course, if you had the Looking Glass device connected to this, it would load, images would load automatically there. And finally, let's see Yellowstone as suggested. I'm not sure where the most dramatic volume could be, but maybe this does look like a mountain range. But we've got the parallel version here. Cross-eye. And the animated one in case someone cannot work with their eyes that way. Okay, so these are some other projects I had ready in case this was too short, but I think mostly that's what I wanted to explain. I'm Juan Irache. The map imagery was loaded from mapbox.com, and I'm open to suggestions, questions if you guys have any. Thank you for your attention.